Blessings and welcome everyone. Hope you are all doing well. Nico here and welcome to my new channel. I have decided to expand a little bit to create a space that is much more personal and much more connected to the greater expanse of the online spiritual world, and also have a space where I can give the content that I put out that's non-horoscope related, that's non-astrology related, that's non-tarot related, a fighting chance when it comes to, say, the algorithm. For those of you who, maybe recall, once upon a time I did have another vlog channel called Scarlet Moon Magic, and then I actually decided a few years ago to attempt to merge my worlds into one space on my primary channel. After about a month of serious contemplation of where I want to go next with my work and my career, as well as what I've got going on with Rob, as well as what has been coming up as sort of some life direction reorientation, I've decided to walk back that decision. And a lot of that is also, I think, because of how the tarot and astrology community online has come into an interesting space of being where the YouTube algorithm itself is really taking it seriously. But I've also noticed that whenever I try to put something that is more personal or maybe part of the greater expanse of the spiritual experience up, whether it's the podcast I'm doing with Rob, or it's a personal video, or it's a lecture or something, it just does not seem to get any kind of support from the AI. And a lot of people will often be like, how come I didn't see this video? How come this didn't show up in my feed and all of that? And so I've decided, well, if I create another channel that for people that are interested in more than just tarot and just horoscopes, and they are interested in more of these bigger topics that I, often bring up, such as magic and mediumship and conscious evolution and crystals and energy work and spiritual contact and, going really in depth into the magical path, I think that a space that is not going to necessarily have what I put out drowned by horoscopes or be lopsided in terms of how it's treated by the online spiritual community or the AI is the way to go. Because a lot of people don't really know that, look, when it comes to tarot and astrology, that's maybe 5 or 10%, if that, probably less than 10%, to be honest, of my spiritual life, of my spiritual process, right? To me, tarot and astrology is my 9 to 5. That's what I do full time. That's my job. But when it comes to my spiritual path, my practice, and the scope of what I'm here to do as part of, I guess you could say, my career or my purpose, has way more going on than just that. I mean, I don't really believe in a singular life purpose, but if I may rehash a line that I have shared before, I feel like a lot of my work here, a lot of my job on this earth is to help make it real for people. And when I say make it real for people, I'm talking about helping people to fully integrate an active and engaged spiritual and magical life and not have it be treated like some kind of self-help metaphor. Because let's be honest, when it comes to the online spiritual community, whether it's the New Age or even some of the more magical practices or pagan paths, because you know me, I've got a foot in each world there, it's not necessarily done that a lot of justice. It's not necessarily made it very real for people. Actually, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were asking what my take on the modern spiritual online community or the conscious evolution community or the spiritual awakening community or all of this is. Like, what's my take on what it's been the last couple of years? And my response is like, it could be kind of a hellscape, to be perfectly honest. It's like if you took footage from the movie Swim Fan or from single white female, and then dubbed the audio over with audio from The Secret. That's basically what you can see in a lot of spaces, and I certainly want nothing to do with that world. And so let's make a new world over here, and we'll see what happens with this vlog channel. And you never know, this vlog channel may actually grow and become a stronger platform, I hope, for more expansive content and have its own dedicated community to support, what I'm putting out there, and, hopefully also with whatever I might have going on with some of my allies. So let's just make it so. And with that being said, now that we're 6 minutes in, hopefully I can edit it down a little bit less than that. I actually wanted to have the opening topic of this channel be a contemplation, unfiltered, unscripted, when it comes to the discussion of what you may have heard or may not have heard of as the witch wound. Let's talk about magic. Let's talk about the witch wound and what might actually be a block or a hurdle to making this real for you, or to making it real for oneself. When we talk about magic, energy work, spiritual contact, living a multidimensional life as a magical being, as one that embraces this as a fundamental part of magic and not turning it into the single white female swim fan secret self-help metaphor. How do we address the wound or the block or the imposition that stands between a full embrace of your own natural and spiritual gifts, who you really are when we talk about a multidimensional experience? So when I say the term witch wound, that might sound pretty loaded, and I do want to disambiguate that a little bit. Because when you hear witch wound, sometimes a person might think, oh, does that mean you were cursed or you were hexed or, crossed, or did somebody, actually commit an act of spiritual warfare against you? No, that's not actually what the witch wound is all about. The witch wound is ultimately the discussion of what's going on with our psyche, what's going on with our emotional and our spiritual blocks to allow ourselves to embrace, say, being psychic, having out-of-body experiences, being able to see the future, being able to apply energy work, being able to cast spells or communicate with spirits, and where that witch wound kind of maybe created a lot of distortion when it comes to understanding the actual spiritual process versus the plastic spiritual process, and where some people might still be carrying certain witch wounds that are prohibiting them from fully stepping into this world. And there are a couple of witch wounds that come to mind immediately that I think would probably be a lot to unpack in a single intro video, but I definitely think that we can create a couple of more videos just based on those, and maybe I will. And maybe this is the part where we start talking about some, deeper work on personal conditioning. Witch wounds I've kind of observed when I am engaged with friends, or I'm talking to, astrology clients or tarot clients, or maybe even engaged with people on a more casual basis, in forums, social media, or even just in person, walking around the street, going to, metaphysical shops and things like that, seem to kind of boil down to either a prejudice or a self-esteem issue. So I want to kind of talk about the prejudice first, because the prejudice itself seems to be alive and well in certain circles. And when I say prejudice, I mean the poisoning or the conditioning that comes from maybe being in a society that is still coping with its darker roots in control systems like organized religion. Whether this is an organized religion that might be conditioning or controlling the protocols or the let's just say, the engagement of a family, or possibly even the control or oppression of an organized religion in a more national or societal place of power, and how that kind of still might echo in the subconscious of somebody who's not fully detached themselves from their subconscious having a role in how they create. An example of this would be the ideas of what is safe and what is not safe, what is okay, what is not okay, what is sanctioned, what is not sanctioned when it comes to the spiritual path and the spiritual practice itself. A very interesting hypocrisy that I've kind of observed in the modern spiritual conversation has been, it's okay to say shaman, it's not okay to say witch. Which is fascinating to me because at the end of the day, a shaman and a witch are actually the same thing. Witchcraft just means craft of the wise, right? Witch. We have these terms that have been damaged, right? They've been distorted by all kinds of pollutants from things like organized religion. And yet, at the same time, so many of these so-called spiritually awakened types are continuing to echo and reverberate those distortions, even though they're claiming to step into a spiritual path. Now, I have some beliefs about that where I feel that, okay, in the New Age's best intentions, I want to say, probably going back to the 60s and 70s, there was an effort, a concerted effort to attempt to wake people up or liberate people from the entrappings of organized religion while also making a lot of the vernacular, a lot of the conversation as palatable to that very conditioning as possible. And so we've kind of come into a space where spells are bad, ceremonies are good. Shamanism, good. Witchcraft, bad. It's a very strange kind of thing to observe as somebody who has been at this practice since he was 13 years old, and observing this sort of weird awakening, as it were, from a lot of the suburbanites that I recall back when I was in, high school in the late 90s, and, being called, a Satanist, and that had no part of my practice. I always told people, like, look, my spiritual path is nature spirits and planetary energies and, and fairies. It's not demons and all of that. But interestingly enough, a lot of those people ended up having a spiritual awakening and started practicing all the stuff they considered once satanic, but you still can't say witch or spell. Now it's got to be shamanism. Now it's got to be, ceremony. And it's like, okay, this is the problem when you mix too much rehab with this crap. And I think that if you are somebody who is naturally psychic, if you are somebody who has had their gifts always on, or you are somebody who's coming at this with a more organic and much more self-determined motivation. You're not doing this as a part of some recovery process. You came here by choice, and you're maybe not necessarily solidified in what you're doing or what you're okay with, or maybe you've been at this for a while, but you notice some old conditioning that might still be running in your head, even though rationally and logically it's very irrational, it's very illogical, and it might actually be something that is quite toxic to continue to allow to be permitted. But when we deal with things like the witch wound, or we confront a witch wound that comes from, say, prejudice or the echoes of, the damnings of organized religion, sometimes we have to take a step back and we have to challenge and see, okay, well, am I not progressing? Am I not getting better because there's a part of me that believes it would be bad, or it would be wrong to delve in, or it would be somehow evil to be able to say, I am a practicing witch, or I am somebody who is naturally a gifted medium, or naturally a gifted seer with the power to foretell. Or maybe it's, I don't want people to think I'm woo-woo because people associate the woo-woo and the witch side of things, right? Anything that's not scratching the surface is dark. However, if you stay on that safe, happy, self-help shamanic surface level of it, and you focus only on things like money and obsessing over, always healing and never being healed, you're good to go. That is going to retard your growth. You've got to be brave enough to challenge that, I say. Okay, almost lost my place. Sorry. I don't want to go on to a rant just yet, because there's another one I wanted to kind of discuss that's also been rattling through my head. And that's kind of, there's a different one. It's not necessarily rooted in prejudice, but it's rooted more in the discussion of maturity. And this one actually hits a bit more close to home for me, and it might hit a bit more close to home for some of you as well, especially for those of you who are over the age of 35. The reason I'm putting that there, it's not a hard number, but I do feel that younger people, people who say graduated from high school after 2010, came up when there was an online spiritual community where you could find anything that you were looking for, or you could find pretty much anyone in order to get a sense of affirmation from. And so it might not necessarily be in you. That's where I'm going with that. But the idea of maturity, and this is something that I've observed even in a lot of my friends who are insanely powerful, more powerful than me, when it comes to all kinds of different gifts, things that I couldn't dream of actually being able to take on. But this idea of being a magical person who is not a yuppie, or someone who is not making it about obsessing over a trauma, or, turning it into a cult or a new reiteration of the organized religion that broke them anyway, is immature. And is it immature to believe in ghosts, especially if you've already had that experience? Is it immature to engage with nature spirits, to believe in fairies when you've seen them before? I think I've shared the story a few times on a number of different videos. Part of my making it real for people is by also giving people a really big magical awakening, not a spiritual awakening, like in terms of, some kind of, car crash and all of a sudden you're asking questions you didn't think to ask before. I meant like a real awakening, like when I was, say, in England, back in 2014, and there was a gathering that I was at with, if you recall, every once in a while I would do these demonstrations where I would open portals for people and planting crystals in the ground, things like that. And I opened these big portals, purging a lot of the density of the space. And guess what? Pixies showed up. People were seeing these orbs. We were all seeing them, having the same experience. These blue and bright green and turquoise orbs dancing around, the landscape, dancing around the grass, jumping up onto us, all over the place throughout the Peak District. That, to me, is this moment, which was very beautiful to witness, where the people who were actually doing the work and they were meditating, we were all totally stone sober, participating in the experience, were able to all share this moment of, oh my goodness, fairies are real, pixies are real, nature spirits are real. We are having this shared experience of seeing what is commonly unseen. To call that or believe that as immature or somehow irresponsible is a special type of browbeating conditioning that I feel is quite strong in a lot of online spiritual communities now, because if it's not immediately applicable to a mundane desire, then it is deemed as irresponsible or immature. And maybe that's a witch wound that you have to heal within yourself. Maybe that is a witch wound that you need to challenge in terms of the maybe limitations that you might impose on your practice, or what you let yourself see, what you let yourself know. And pay attention to the company that you keep when you're looking at these things. If you feel like there is prejudice that is motivating and controlling the vernacular, the growth, or the expansiveness, or the opportunity for expansiveness in a group, get out. If you feel like everything is all about trying to turn this into a metaphor for the human condition in the mundane, get out. Sometimes it's incredibly toxic in a lot of these healing circles and self-help, personal development spaces. And a lot of them are just kind of there to keep people out of trouble. And you might not belong there. I don't. And so pay attention to where it's time to take a step back every once in a while so you can work on your witch wound. Because this is, I think, where we are. If we want to talk about a collective conscious evolution and awakening process, which I do believe is happening, I just don't think it's happening the way it's been popularized. This is where we are. And a lot of us are getting a chance to fully embrace our magical nature, our multidimensional nature. But in order to do that, we are going to need to be able to purge, call out, eliminate, and yes, destroy the cause and the core of our witch wounds, and be able to talk about these things and to be able to experience these things in ways that also honor the experience for what it is, as opposed to maybe trying to put a spin on it, to dumb it down for the, for the mean girls and the Instagram New Agers, or for the, for the thought leaders and the prosperity gospel. Let's get rid of a lot of that, okay? We don't need that. They never should have been here in the first place. I was part of the fight that tried to keep them out. Sorry, we were outnumbered. But now we're at a different space. And so just a few thoughts that I've been kind of rattling around in my head. I do want to come back and talk about the witch wound, but I feel like maybe as part of practice for getting back into the flow of vlogging, I would like to leave this here and just see what the responses are, what kind of comes through, and we can have a conversation about this. And if you did enjoy this, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You know I appreciate it, and of course engagement is going to help this channel grow a lot. And if you ever do want to get a tarot or astrology session with me, I actually do both at the same time, you can always go on ahead to my website, integrativemysticism.com. And stay tuned. We'll be coming back with more vloggy chats here very soon. You all take care. Thank you so much for stopping by.